Hi, I'm James Shin. Today I'm gonna have a kind of short instruction about how to take Hasselblad long exposure landscapes using black and white films with anti-filters. This easy Hasselblad series will be composed of 3 or 4 chapters, and this is the first one. The title of this chapter is the Hasselblad Basic Exposure and Focus Range. I hope this will be helpful for beginners, especially for beginners, and I'll make it as simple and easy as possible. As you possibly know, there are 3 critical factors regarding the proper exposure. Yes, they are the aperture, the shutter speed, and the ISO. And surely you're supposed to consider the focus at the same time. Okay, this is my 503CX and the CF5 50mm f4. This combination is my favorite one to take most of my pictures. Compared to the CF50mm's minimum aperture of f22, the CF5 50mm's minimum is f32, which is a huge plus for landscape with strong perspective and for the long exposures. And the CF5 50mm's lens diameter is a 70mm compared to 60 of the CF 50mm and most of other Hasselblad lenses. So I always put the Hasselblad 70 to 60 downring on my CF5 50mm lens, and then I have no problem using one size filter, mostly Hasselblad B60, for all of my Hasselblad lenses, just like this. Now I'll show you what the numbers and indicators on Hasselblad lenses mean. Okay, first this is the distortion correction, and it's kind of not so much used function, especially for beginners, so I'll have a chance for it maybe next time. The next one is the shutter speed. Okay, starting at bulb, it goes like 1 second, a half second, a quarter, etc. blah blah to 500, and each step means the 1 step decrease of exposure, and the aperture is from f32 to f4, and this time each step means 1 step increased exposure, vice versa the previous shutter speed. For an example, let's say that you measure the exposure by a light meter for an aperture f16 and get the result of shutter speed of 30 for that. Okay, f16 and 30 for that. At this state, you open the aperture to f11, then shutter speed of 60 will bring out the same amount of exposure with the former combination of f16 and 30. And there will be no difference in exposure in general. And this time, to step up to f22 and to step down to 15. All this means the stop in exposure, and it's one of the most basic and critical factors when taking the Hasselblad and other analog film camera pictures. Okay, then why the different combinations for the same exposure? What's the difference? That's the realm of focus and depth and many other situations, just like the whether you have your tripod right now or have to take a handheld shot unavoidably. Or let's say you now take a long exposure shot of a subject which is somewhat submerged in the water, and the speed of clouds flowing up in the sky is too fast or too slow. And you want to express the movement of the flow of clouds in a given exposure time using your anti-filters. When the reciprocity figure is applied, you can freely decide the exposure time so that you can express the movement of clouds and the distances they move in a given exposure time very well in your picture. And the next one is the focus range and depth for perspective. When you take just for an infinity landscape, which I never like, you don't need to mind the depth and focus range. There are uncountable variables in deciding the exposure. One point is that you don't need to make the aperture closed all the time. Especially when the focus is at infinity, actually there's no practical difference between f32 and f5.6. Okay, what about there's a subject that you like, in my case kind of a fish fancy in the water, whatever actually. Okay, it is just in front of you and your camera. Then what you have to do for taking a good landscape with great emotional perspective is to care for the focus range. That's the very point of this chapter. You can see the subject is right in front of my camera and the focus is both on the subject and on the horizon, I mean the infinity, which is very important because the extreme perspective like this is very good at expressing emotions that the photographers feel at the moment than the picture is just showing infinite landscapes. That's the very point of this chapter, the extreme perspective. Okay, now you have a look at the focus gauge on the lens. There are two types of indicators, yes, meter and feet. Because I live in Korea where people only use the meter just like other Asian countries, I'll keep going with meters. Okay, let's figure out how to recognize the focus range with this. You can see the infinity marker at first glance, can you? Let's say the main subject is right in a relatively close place in front of you. Let's say 2-meter distance. Put the infinity marker to somewhere in a closed aperture. Let's make it at f16. Very easy, huh? What you do next is to check the other side. Yes, check the other f16 marker. What can you see? It's with the marker indicating 1.7 meter. Now you got it. From 1.7 meter to infinity is the focus range. This time let's say the subject now is in 1 meter in front of you, the real extreme perspective. Then how can you set the aperture? Put the infinity at f32 and check the other side. Okay, this is f32, this is f32. Here's a 0.9 meter. And the wider the lenses are, the wider the focus ranges become. This is my SWCM with super wide 38mm. In this case, the focus range at f22 is from 0.7 meter. But if you just want to focus the subject in front of you, just like kind of portraits, and blur the background with open aperture, then you don't need to do that, and checking the focus through Prism Viewfinder is a simple and easy way. Next time, I'll have a talk about the ND filter applied exposure calculation and the reciprocity failure. Thank you for watching. Bye bye.